Dave, thank you for coming in to see us.
Afternoon.
Straight from Kingsway or K1 this morning.
I am, yeah.
Freshly showered with a nice new polo shirt on.
I am showered, which is a good thing for you.
Absolutely, and we've got a picture of a rather special fish you had yesterday.
Yes, I had a very good afternoon yesterday. I was on the lake and I'd had 24 hours, well not even that, but I'd had an overnight at one end of the lake blanking. And I woke up in the morning and just looked at it. Normally I'd wait and fish till, 10, 11 o'clock, end of any possible bite time. By about 7 o'clock I was all packed up, rod still out, thinking how long can I give it, and I thought, sod it, I knew I weren't going to get one, so I wound them in, went for a walk round, found a swim right at the other end, a couple of fish showed, so I packed up, got my gear around there, I put one rod out, put it on the deck, turned around to pick up the second rod, and that rod was away, only close in, and that was mirror about 18 pound or so. Thought, this is the one, so I put both rods out there. Still hadn't set up the bivvy or anything. I wasn't really sure. I wasn't 100%. And then the same rod went, and I had this 45 pound linear.
Wow!
And I put the bivvy up.
Just shows you.
Put the bed up, settled in. I thought, it's the one.
You can spend one night down the other end, have nothing, right place, right time. Can only take a matter of minutes. And
5 minutes in the right place. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd been in the swim a total. When I was taking these photos, I'd been in the swim probably not even an hour from start till I'd had 2 fish, including that, which is a monster. I was so chuffed with it.
Yeah, and that's a stunning fish. Has this named this one?
It is. It's called Boris because it was first caught over 40 pound the day that Boris Johnson was elected. So it got called Boris.
Is there a Trump in there as well? Or?
Not that I know of, but I wouldn't put anything past them.
That's a lovely fish, though.
Yeah, you run out of names for fish, don't you? You know, the zip, the paddle, the rudder, and that. So Boris.
Old cliche name. Boris, I like that one. But how are you anyway? I mean,
I'm very well.
A couple of months ago, you had you in the chair. I know you've been bang out with the fishing recently, but you're keeping well.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, healthy and happy and wise.
Good. And there's a big announcement
wise
that we've all seen recently as well. You've now joined forces with Solar Tackle as well.
I have.
And you've got ourselves for your terminal, and your Solar, which is a great brand. Got some great new kit coming through as well, and obviously with Main on as well. Just chat us a little bit about that.
Well, it's sort of, it's great for me. It's been a long journey to get to where I am now, but I feel like where I am now is complete, if you like. I have done in the past. I've helped design some very good gear, and I've been in companies that are sort of up and coming, if you like, or changing their approach. But I've settled now, I hope, with companies that have been around almost as long as I have. And everything's tried and tested, and there'll still be improvements with hopefully with yourselves and with Solar and things changing and what have you. But I'm very happy with everything I'm sat behind at the moment, and that's a really nice feeling.
Settled, yeah.
Yeah, it is. I sometimes look at my gear and think, "Ooh, that's mine."
And obviously with Mainline, you've been with Mainline from day dot,
30 years or something ridiculous.
So you're with some proper old school brands now that have been around.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm doing some rod development with a friend of mine who owns a company called Cadence, and I've been given free rein to make the best carp rods I can make, and that's an ongoing process, which isn't ready yet, but hopefully will be fairly soon. I've been doing that for just over a year now. Head's in a good place, and
it's all falling into place.
Yeah,
now.
Everything's really. I'm happy with everything.
Just carry on going, get out with your fishing, do what you do best, and catch carp, and with reliable tackle.
Yeah, it's like I say, I couldn't be happier of the way things have really turned out.
Good, pleased for you, mate. Really pleased for you. So we've got you in today to talk about what is probably, I think, every angler's favourite time of the year, which is autumn.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
Little shot there of a nice little tumble shot of you fishing. You get magical sunsets.
That's what you picture up, isn't it, when you think of autumn?
Damp wet. You're not still too cold. It's just, the fish are often at their prettiest. So we wanted to speak to you a little bit about, if anyone who's watching this and has maybe got a campaign coming up on their chosen lake, about how to approach autumn and sort of like the way you would go about doing it, be it a big pit or a smaller pit. What generally are like, your approach, and why do you love autumn so much?
Well, for a start, the fish tend to feed really heavily in autumn, which is obviously a bonus, isn't it? You've had the summer where it's all a little bit picky and maybe the oxygen levels aren't brilliant or whatever, and you get into autumn, you get better oxygen levels, you get some good winds, you get some low pressures. And, you know, people say, oh, the fish feed up for winter, store up for winter. I don't know whether I go along with that or not. I just think it's a very good time. All the conditions are right. Everything's perfect for carp feeding, and that's exactly what they do. There's a little drop in the water temperature. Like I say, there's a bit more oxygen. They harvest up all the natural food that's on its way out, you know, collapsing weed beds and stuff like that. And it's just, for me, it's the best time of year. I always say that September and May are my top 2 months of the year. If I could only fish 2, they are the 2 I'd fish. I like February, but September and May, and into October a bit as well.
Yeah,
you know, it's a prime time. If I look back at all my captures over the years, the amount that come up in that period is just unbelievable. You know, the concentration of big fish in that period. You know, if you find them the right time of day, give them what they want to eat. You know, for me, it's a boilie month. You know, I tend to drop the particle approach and everything and just concentrate on boilies. At the moment, I'm using 18mm mainline cell boilies, just straight out of the bag, and putting in quite a lot of bait. And they come across it, they eat it, they want it this time of year. So
it's weird. You sort of go back maybe 20, 25 years ago. Winter seemed to be winter. You had proper seasons then, but it seems like obviously global warming, whatever you want to call it nowadays, the season, we had a really late summer this year.
Yeah.
It really didn't get going till mid-June, and then obviously all the fish spawned, so we've had a real funny season.
It's been a bizarre year for fishing this year.
Yeah, it's been a weird one, so I'm sort of maybe hoping that we almost get like an extended autumn.
I don't think we've really, although I've had some amazing captures recently, and it's, you know, and it has fallen in with what I've predicted and talked about in the past, you know, September, but I don't think we've even started yet with this sort of thing, with proper autumn. Last week was what, mid-20s? I was sat there in shorts and no t-shirt. I know it's a horrible thought, but I was. I turned the video off. Yeah, it was summer, wasn't it? It was really, and the week before that was even hotter. It was ridiculous. This week, yes, it's dropped a lot, but now we're into October. And I think October's going to be blinding. You know, I think that is like, I remember September's, when you get that drop off, that change between, you know, summer and autumn. I think that's only just started. I think we've still got a few really, really good weeks to come.
Yeah, it's just one of them magical months, isn't it? And like I say, it's weird because I still remember going back, you know, a long time ago, you'd have a September, you'd get frosts. Whereas, well, I don't think even last year we didn't even see a frost till November time.
No, the weather is different. I mean, and people, like you said about global warming and that, I'm not so sure I sort of go along with that. That's the cause. I think if you look long term, you know, long term, the weather is in cycles over decades, if you like, and we're just in one of those periods at the moment where everything seems to be just out of kilter by about a month.
And again, I think what you get nowadays is social media and hype up with news that pushes it towards global and gets everyone worried.
Oh, everyone wants to chuck the blame on someone for everything, don't they? So
okay. So generally, you know, again, we're in the autumn now, as you know, from a couple of days ago. Your approach on any venue. I mean, at the moment, you know, say you're fishing K1. What's your general approach? You know, that makes you so different from maybe summer fishing or spring fishing? What do you adapt or change a little bit to in your autumn approach?
I take more bait.
Yeah.
I take mainly boilies. I concentrate. I always concentrate a lot on finding the fish, where the fish are. But I think you invest more at this time of year because you're getting bites a lot of the time after dark in a lot of areas. So you can be taking a little bit of a gamble if the fish aren't showing throughout the. Say if you're there for the morning and you're looking around and you're looking for a swim to plot up in for 24 hours, you might not see an awful lot in that period. So you're taking a little bit of a gamble. So I spend extra time making sure that I've got it right before I invest that bait that I hope they're going to eat that evening, that night, the next morning. So yeah, heavier on the location, but you tend to learn lakes. They repeat themselves year after year at this time of year.
Habits,
Yeah, they're going to go. You know, on some lakes they'll move into the middle. You know, it's a classic, into deeper, siltier areas. Pressured lakes like K1, they get moved. You know, they'll move into an area, get a lot of angler pressure, and then they move out again. So keeping your finger on the pulse as to what's been happening lately. You know, what's been caught from where, not following but maybe doing exactly the opposite. Maybe thinking, right, they've been spanked up there, they're going to be down there. that sort of thing, making sure I'm on the fish, like I say, bringing up the baiting levels, but fishing quite simply, really. I think it's an easier time to fish than the summer. You know, there's not so much mucking about with floaters and zigs and, you know, small approaches and fishing bits and that. You're just finding the fish, feeding them, and hopefully catching them.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of location, and again, you sort of touched a little bit a minute ago that generally is this time of year you will get the bites of a night. Is that in your eyes? I personally think it's because the fish are often lapping up maybe the last of the light during the days and moving around a little bit more freely. Temperature drops down a little bit, they sink down maybe and think of a night. But that may be why you see fish come out more in the dark in the autumn than the day.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got more dark. You know, we've gone, once you go through the equinox, you've got 12 and 12, 12 light, 12 dark, and then every day thereafter there's more dark than there is light. So, you know, that's going to affect it. But yes, if you get a nice sunny day, you'll quite often find the fish in places at this time of year that they're not going to be feeding in, just cruising about, sitting in weed beds, doing whatever. Doesn't mean they're going to be there come bite time. So yeah, I don't know, but whatever the reason, it always changes over, or nearly always changes over to darkness feeding and darkness showing. I mean, this particular session, I didn't see a single thing the first day from first light. I got there an hour before first light, and I hadn't seen a single fish by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Tea time, like the last hour before dark, I probably saw 10 fish show.
Really?
It's just dump. It's like someone throws a switch. As soon as that dusk comes in, one pops his head out, then another pops his head out. Whether they're higher in the water, lower in the water, whether they're just more active, whatever, or feeding, whatever the reason, that's the time for location. Just before dark and through the night. If you don't know where they are, it's really worth getting up or staying up at night, locating where they are, either moving then or planning if you're doing another night, thinking, right, first thing in the morning, I'm over there. Yeah,
because you generally do on what, 2 or 3
I do 2 nights most of the year, Monday and Tuesday, and when it's on, like generally in May, September, beginning of October and February, I do 3 nights a year. If I think I play it by ear. If I think you know, I've always got that ticket for the third night. I don't use it unless I think, this is
in with a good chance. Yeah. So you sort of generally use the first night as almost like a bit of a recce.
I can sometimes. I try not to. I try never to do it, but I can sometimes throw away the first night, especially if one end of the lake's really busy and I think I'm sure they're up this other end. You know, I'll think, well, I've got 3 nights this week. I'm going to do a night in here, and the next morning I might have been rewarded. Or I might think, no, they weren't. I'll get up there with the others.
Yeah. Okay. So again, we sort of covered your approach, but in terms of the zones and the areas you fish, on average, would you say that? Do you tend to try and stick to maybe? I know you're looking a lot of the time for where the fish are showing themselves. Obviously, that's what we all go by. But do you tend to find the fish may start to congregate near deeper water now, or around old weed beds like you're talking about? Is it silty areas, or is it just?
I think weed beds are a big thing at this time of year because they're collapsing. You know, they're falling apart, falling down. They've got a lot of natural food in them. Fish find that really interesting. There must be a lot of grub coming out of them. Decaying weed beds, fishing up against them on K1 this year, one of the main spots on the lake, unfortunately 3 different swims fish at it, and they're now all fishing at a piece of weed about the size of this table, literally, from different angles. But the fish, bizarrely enough, there's a load of fish in there and around there, and that's done the bulk of the bites, this one tiny area. So there's something in that. There's something in that weed that they desperately want, and they're willing to get caught around it not over and over, but individually, one after another, and not just bugger off somewhere else because they're so interested in this bit of weed. And that can be the same in silty areas. They can get in the silt, and they can be very hard to catch this time of year in the silt. You'll see fizzing, massive loads of fizzing, but you can't get a bite because you're competing with a huge amount of natural food. But I've caught fish recently from K1 in a very silty area by fish finding small hard patches and accurately baiting with a load of boilies. So as they're feeding in the silt, they come across, this somewhere they've fed 100 million times before, and they come across this known gravelly spot on the bottom, and it's covered in boilies, And what I'm hoping is they just think that's an easier meal. That's an easier meal than what I've just been doing, and they drop down and have it, and it has worked for me.
And it's worked for you as well, because like I said, I think we've all been there where we've been fishing some, you've got them frizzing like mad on you, showing, and you think, why am I not getting a bite here? But you tend to just stick to your guns.
Chasing bubblers can be so frustrating. It's worse than floater fishing. Don't just say worse, I love them both, but it's really frustrating because you're trying to interrupt what they're doing. If you get close to them, that lead goes doof on the bottom, they're going to move off and start feeding and fizzing over there. You just chase them about. It's like chasing them on the surface with a single floater. You're better off finding an area, putting a load of floaters, getting them going, and then putting your bait
setting
there.
A trap
and that's the same in the silt, really. You're better off setting a trap. Even if you're fishing not on a hard bit, if you're fishing in the silt, I like to bait really accurately and try and draw all them little bubble trails, maybe over the morning, maybe over 2 days or 3 days, but get them to all start fizzing there, and then you think, I've given them something that's a higher reward than what they've naturally been digging for. That's the way I sort of approach it when they're like that.
And when you say accurately baiting, are you maybe baiting an area almost like the size of this table,
I'd
tight,
say
not spread
that
baits?
table's about right.
Okay.
If I'm in a range where I can use a catapult and 18mm baits, that's prime for me, because up to, what should we say, 40-45 yards, you're not getting any spread. You can get a pouch full of 18mm baits. And once you've got that pull, when you've got your two arms locked and you know exactly where to let go, if you've got a marker out there, say you're getting out there and it's just going and it's just beating the marker to death. Over that they start to obviously spread out, and then you might need to spom or spod or whatever. But yes, I'd like to. That would be a perfect sort of size with hook bait in it, and whatever, depends. You can't say how much bait, depends where you're fishing and what's in there, but a fair amount of bait.
So you will always tend to stick to a tight bit of bait, generally.
And I'm not one, and I know it's a really good method, and I've seen a lot of people I know employ it really well, and they'll put 3 baits on that. I can't do that. If I can, or 2 if you can use 2 rods, 3 if you can use 3. I think I'd rather ask 3 different questions. One there, one on a hard spot, or even if I know I'm going to be fishing in the silt, 3 different patches, one close, one medium, one far, whatever. I want to be asking 3 questions. I've seen it work really well. The lads doing that will get 3 bites, bang, 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 one after the other. But I just think if you wrap up properly, clip up, you got your marker, you're accurate, you can have that, you can unhook that fish and have that back out there in a minute.
Straight back
one, yes, it's a splash, but it's one splash as long as you don't rebait or anything. Bop, dunk, and that's fishing again. And your other 2 haven't been disturbed, and that might be the one that goes next. So,
okay, so let's just say we've got a baited area, size of this table. Where are you placing your rig on this zone? This is an interesting one.
Yes, and I think people are fooling themselves if they think they're that accurate. I've done a lot of boat fishing. I've even been in boats with glass bottom buckets with mates casting and vice versa, telling you what's really happening, and you're not always quite as accurate as you think to say it's going to be there.
right on the edge
and my leaders in the weed, and that's
unless you place it by a boat, I don't really think you in your castings.
So no, as long as I know I'm in that zone, it depends what I'm fishing on. If I'm fishing on something, so I can get up a tree and see the spot. If it's blatant, or if it feels blatant and it's bright and it's been stripped and it's they've been there and been there and been there and been there, I don't want to be in the middle of that, because they can suss your rig so much easier. I'd rather be right on the edge or off of it a little bit. I have actually fished lakes where I've baited the big white-yellow spot.
Polished area.
I've baited it to death, and then I've fished pinged 4 or 5 baits around the outside and fished one in the muck next to it. And that's the only way I could get a bite from that spot. It's not from that spot, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll eat everything on there, but they won't pick up your rig. They've just got it sussed. But fishing off of it, I've had a bite. That's extreme. But if I'm fishing blind out there, generally I want to be in amongst my bait.
Okay. All right. So winds this time of year can be quite important, because obviously we're going to start to get some colder winds. So do you tend to sort of follow on with the winds? I know it can be different days is how you feel about it, but how intensely do you follow wind directions?
I am obsessed with the wind.
Okay.
Absolutely obsessed. And it doesn't always pay off. And I've lost count. I mean, just last week, I think it was, I fished and I made the mistake, and I hate myself for doing it. I do it all the time. I sit in a swim, the wind's just trickling in, or not quite in, and I've got my weather app, and I'm looking, thinking, yeah, but at 11 o'clock tonight it's going westerly and it's going up to 25 mile an hour, and they're going to be in here. And you sit there and you sit there and you sit there, and it doesn't come, or when it comes it's 7 mile an hour, and in the morning it's all over, and you just think, I've just wasted 24 hours of my life waiting for weather when I should have fished on what I can see.
Yeah.
A new wind's brilliant, you know, a new wind's amazing, but you've got to assess what the lake is offering the fish as well. Like, again, let's stick with K1 because that's where I am at the moment, and it's autumn now. As I said with the weed, those fish are living in that weed. Some fish are going, a westerly blows at the other end of the lake, which I love. I caught this one on a westerly.
Yes, sorry, just quickly looking at this fish now. This is...
It's a fish called Bromfields,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I caught this at the other end of the lake to the weed, where a westerly blows, and I've been doing a fair bit of fishing up there. I love it up there. It's further away from the dog kennels, which are really loud, and it's further away from the bulk of the anglers. It's not a very popular end, and I really like it because it's quiet. It's a different style, different style of fishing, and quite often you're on your own up there. A westerly, a northwesterly, or sort of west-southwest all blow into there, and the fish will get up there, and sometimes they get up there in numbers. There was quite a lot of fish up there when I caught this, but they go really quick. If you're set up and another angler sets up opposite, you're waiting for, say, a night time. It's a bit of a nighttime area up there. You're waiting for a nighttime bite. Before dark, 2 anglers turn up for an overnighter and they go opposite you, or one next to one opposite. I've actually packed up,
moved
half an hour before dark and moved. I thought, it's done. I know it's done. They start spomming and that. I think them fish are going. I'm just going to follow them. I haven't seen them go, but I just...
In your heart.
Yeah, I know that they're going. So yeah, it's, you know, I had this in perfect conditions, just me up there and the wind coming in. But it doesn't always take the wind to get them in there. Sometimes they're just there on a hot day or whatever. But yes, we were talking about wind. I think the wind makes a big difference if the fish aren't like they are there now, hanging in the weed at the top end. They love it there. The wind doesn't move the pack of fish. They just want to be there. The odd ones go up the other end on a new wind. But in general, they know where they want to be. If you haven't got that, say if you've got a great big lake with not a lot of weed, or even a smallish lake with not a lot of weed, not too much angler pressure, then the winds at this time of year are immense, absolutely immense. When you get them first big pressure drops, because the pressure, it's not just the wind, it's the pressure drop that accompanies it. In sort of September, October, when you get those first big southwesterlies with a massive drop of pressure, they're the ones to be on. If you can be there on day one of the first, if you've had high pressure, because hot weather is generally high pressure and is quite often northerlies, easterlies, swirly little winds, farty ones that just go round and round, that do an awful lot. And then you get to the autumn, you get that massive drop of pressure, you get that first big southwesterly, strips all the leaves off the trees and bends them right over. If you can be there on day one with that in your face, I don't think you can really fail to catch, or to be at least to be so confident it's ridiculous.
So anyone watching this, big southwest,
stay at home when they come. If you're on my lake,
don't go over.
Don't go fishing.
So
don't
basically, look at your app. If you can see a big southwesterly coming in, low pressure,
or the wind that affects your lake the best, because a lot of lakes lay that north to south, but some, like where I am now. Horton was the same, which is just next door. Monks was the same, lay across the compass. And that can be different. A southwesterly can be quite rubbish because it can blow into the entire length of one bank. And a southerly can be completely different to a westerly. Whereas on a lot of lakes it isn't like that. The southwesterly is that way, the northeasterly is that way. And that's the difference. But whatever that first wind that's sort of beneficial to where you're fishing, and that big pressure drop, that's what you got to look for, is the pressure drop. And you're going to catch. You really are.
Right, bait. We spoke a little bit about bait. Now, it's quite interesting to say, this is a lovely fish, actually. I think you had this one over quite a large bed of bait.
I did. That's No Name, and that's from Raisbury 1 South Lake.
Yeah.
Now, Raisbury 1 South Lake, obviously I fished Raisbury way back when, and the South Lake and the North Lake were one lake. They're now separated by a bund, so they're two separate lakes. And it's the North Lake, this lake, that's got the big uns in, and they've grown absolutely huge in there. This was in, again, this was mid-September, I believe, a couple of years ago. It was my second trip onto the lake for 30 years or 25, whatever, for a long, long time. I'd been up there the week before, it was a bit of a recce, and thought, I'm going to go and have a look. I'd got a ticket, I've got a coverall ticket for OK Leisure, and I thought I'll go up there and have a little look around. And I ended up fishing a swim, the Rocky Barge, and looking out over the lake, and like I say, it was a bit of a recce, and I saw a lot of fish showing in a swim that we used to call, it was still called the Stile, which is on the opposite bank, nowhere near, someone was in there, I couldn't get near these fish. But anyway, I sort of marked it down in my head and thought they're using that area a lot. The next week I got up there and that swim was free, so I thought, just on what I saw last week, just on that location and the time of year, and quite often once they find an area and they want to feed there, I'm going to drop in here. Now, I know one of the bailiffs up there, Al, really well, and I know a few of the lads, and I'd done a bit of homework on the phone, and apparently quite a lot of bait had been going in. Quite a few fish were getting caught, generally over big beds of bait, and they were passing out bait. They were on the munch, and I thought, well, I can do that. I've got a freezer full of bait. I can play this game. So I've gone up there. I've got a lot of bait in the motor. I've gone straight into this style swim. Spots don't generally, feeding areas might change, but the actual topography of the lake never changes. Where you've got rock hard gravel that doesn't grow weed, it's always going to be the same. I knew the lake from 25 years or whatever it was beforehand. I knew there was a strip at about 70 yards that never grew weed, and the swim was chocker with weed. I mean, absolutely solid, top to bottom, solid with weed. I put it out roughly, and I got it wrong a couple of times, and then suddenly all the way at the bottom, a donk, and then a big slide back, and then two or three of them, and I thought, it's still there, and I filled it in with bait.
When you say fill it in, what are we talking here?
I mean, it depends, doesn't it? It's all relative to the lake and the person, really. But I call filling it in, putting in anything over 5 kilos to start with is quite a lot of boilie going in, I think. I know some people go, that's nothing, I put in blah blah, and some people think, Christ, 5 kilos, I could never afford that. It's it's all relative. So about 5 kilos of bait across the swim. I think it was 3 rods. I believe it was 3 rods at that time. Boom, 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 across it. And the very first bite, the very first night, was this one, which was full. I believe it was 48 pounds, which just blew me away. It was the second biggest fish I'd ever caught from Raisbury, including all the ones I'd caught back in the day. I know it's a different game nowadays. Fish are generally an awful lot bigger. But still, I still had to lift it up. It's still a massive
still
fish.
A big fish.
I was, as you can see from the photo, I was over the moon with it. Yeah, I was chuffed. I had 4 fish, I think it was, that session, and just thought, wow. And I'm convinced I put more bait in the next day and got another couple of bites. And they ate a lot. It was the right time of year, the right air pressure, the right everything. Wind didn't come into it. That's where they were. I'd seen them there the week before. They were still there, and they continued to stay there. That became, or carried on being, the top swim on there throughout the winter. It became ridiculous. It
probably become a food larder, didn't it? If you've gone in there, you've caught, everyone else is jumping in after, you're creating a feeding
and I probably
area.
did that after other people. It wasn't something that I created. I saw fish there probably because they'd been doing it for weeks before I'd even started fishing there. I didn't create it, I just got on it. But then it got to the stage where if there was one car in the car park, it wasn't even worth looking in the style.
You knew where they were going to be.
And then you were fishing next door to the style, and that became good because bait, then started taking them in there, and they'd go on that bait as well. And but they wanted bait, they really did. They are bait fish.
So Okay, normally
you don't grow a
autumn
body
now.
like that if you don't like your dinners.
I was going to say, he definitely likes his roast, doesn't he, that one? But like you say, again, talking on the bait, you really will only take boilie with you, and interestingly, 18 mils.
I say only, no, at that time, when I caught that one, I used a lot of chopped boilie.
Yeah.
The 18 mil boilie thing is something that I go back to quite, I say regularly. Sporadically, I'll go back to it. My favourite way of fishing, and with some of my close mates who've been at it as long as I have, is big boilies, 18s or 20s, nothing else, a big bottom bait, and that's it. That's my favourite. If you can get them to just be shoveling down them great big baits, then your rigs become less important, because it's dump, and the force of them ejecting an 18 or a 20 mil bottom bait when they realise they've made a mistake rams that hook home. Nowadays, there's a lot of pressure on waters, and that's not always good enough, which is why we all use what we use. I use Ronnies and 360s and what have you, because it's not always good enough. But in some situations, it's perfect. But I like fishing like that. But then if you have a couple, it gets a bit tricky and you don't get the bites you think you should have got, then you start using smaller baits and chop baits and mincing baits and bits of particle and bits of corn, and then you get on the plastic corn on your rigs, and your catch rate might go up a little bit, and you see other people doing it, and it becomes a thing. It just gets in your head a bit. And then I was using buckets full of chop baits with whole baits in there, but quarters and crumb and everything. I might have even had a bit of particle mixed in, I can't remember. But that's the way I was fishing at the time. But at the moment, I'm back on the 18 mil baits because they're eating them. And if I can get them to accept those baits, it makes everything so much easier. I don't like spodding. I don't like spodding. I don't like the noise.
No, but you don't like the disruption it makes.
No, I can't stand it. So if I can, like I said earlier, use a catapult or a throwing stick, and get them in without.
And he's the perfect boilie size as well for catapults and throwing sticks, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, 18 mil baits. So I air dry all mine, only for like 24, maybe 48 hours if you get a nice dry spell. Put them in the garage at night, still open, put them back out in the sun in the day, and then I treat them with a dip. It's called Activator. It's not actually a dip. It's supposed to go in the base mix. It's quite strong. I only put a little bit in there, but it makes them harder. Almost like pickles the outside a bit, so they don't
like
split.
A binder or something.
Yeah, it sort of sets them hard, but doesn't. The inside's still perfect, and it's really smelly. Of the same, you use the matching one, the cell at the moment, and it makes them brilliant in a throwing stick. Oh, they just, you don't get any of that zing as they split in two.
That horrible noise there.
And you don't have to welly it with an 18 mil bait like you do with a 16.
No.
You can get that movement.
Especially you get the wind behind you as well sometimes. They go the miles, don't they?
I mean, obviously the downside of that are the seagulls. That's the problem. You get the back. A lot of people, some people might not realise that a catapult works differently to a throwing stick. When catapult baits hit the water, yes, they stop. Everything stops, and then they sink, but only for a millisecond. But a throwing stick goes backwards. They roll backwards, so they go in like that. They might go down a tiny way, and then they come back up. So when you see that seagull hit the water,
hovers,
and you think it goes, doof, they don't waste any effort. No. I maintain that when they hit the water, they've got a bait. Otherwise, they'll stop doing it because that's energy, and they'll just kill you. But I've got the solution to that, haven't I?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
I've got Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
He's my dead plastic seagull. I just chuck him out in the margins, and they all go round and round and higher and higher.
What I noticed about that when you've done that, actually, is the way they climbed. And we stood from the
spiral,
other side on the video that we'd done, and you can... And I was standing with, I think it was Craig Smithson and a couple of the other guys, and we was watching them climb the thermals.
Oh yeah, they get higher and higher. They're petrified of it.
I mean, one, it was hilarious in terms of I was gobsmacked at what I was seeing, but I watched the way they reacted.
Yeah.
And they just went, so they was constantly watching, but they went right up there. Crazy.
And they can give you, an hour to bait up before the one will think, that's not a real seagull. That's Bob again.
He's done us again, hasn't he? Oh dear.
I did have him. He struggled a bit the other day. Just one particular day, they weren't so convinced. A couple of them didn't buy it, and I thought, are they getting used to it already? Because they're clever.
Oh God,
they're clever things.
Like magpies, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very clever. But up until then, recently, he's been a godsend.
He's been an asset to the bag, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But so let's go on to rigs. Again, we know how much you love your 360, but do you tend to change your rigs at all for the autumn?
I very rarely change rigs
throughout the seasons.
Yeah, very, very rarely. You're trying to achieve the same job with a rig every time you put it in the water, and I don't think the weather or temperature makes a great deal of difference. Let's discard zig rigs for the minute. When the temperature drops and the water temperature gets to a level where the fish are happier higher up, we go on to zig rigs. But let's discard all of that for a minute and think about rigs on the bottom of the lake. So on the bottom of the lake, like I say, I do like to use a big bottom bait when I use a bottom bait, I'm talking about using a long hair and a small hook, a hair rig, an old-fashioned hair rig. I like that rig in silt. It's the opposite of what most people do in silt. They think, we don't want to be in the smelly silt. We'll use a pop-up or we use a chod or whatever. I think in silt, the fish are feeding in the silt. That's why
for a reason.
Yeah, that's why they're fizzing. I've seen fish. You can't even see the top of their gills or their head. You see the back half of the fish, but they're down there feeding.
Buried in it.
Being balanced 2 inches above the top ain't going to do you no favours. So I do like that rig, especially with nylon. I don't use it a lot, probably don't use it enough. But my basic go-to rigs is a 360 and a Ronnie. They're my normal rigs. I do use, for bottom baits, if I'm not using the nylon, there's a lot of times I won't use the nylon because of snags, heavy weed, that sort of situation. So for a general bottom bait rig, I use a straight piece of coated braid, slightly stripped back, with a tungsten liner on the hook and a hair, not tight, so it's not tight to the hook, but a hair where you've got the hook and the boilie just clears it. So a little bit.
So when you're running it over, it'll pass the
pass
top
the bend.
Part of the hook. Yeah.
Yes, just past it. So there's a 2 mil, let's say, between the boilie and the bend of the hook. That rig I've probably caught more fish on than I've caught on a 360. Definitely more than a Ronnie, because a Ronnie's a sort of newer development. So that's my basic bottom bait rig. Then I've got the 360, which I've used for years and years and years, and then you've got the Ronnie, which is very similar to the 360, which I've used a lot more recently. And they're my 3 rigs. I'd say discard zigs, floaters. There's not a lot more in my armoury because I don't find the need for anything else. They're always going to catch me fish, whether it's on the bottom, on a pop-up, on a wafter. I'll use that bottom bait rig.
Yeah, so when you're using the bottom bait, when you're talking about, so you use a smaller hook, is it? Will you be using an 18mm pop-up bottom bait?
It's not always a smaller hook. It's a smaller hook if I can get away with it on the nylon. But on my standard go-to approach, it'll be my normal hook. I use it for snag fishing. I use it with a size 4 beefed up hook. So it's not down to the hook size with that. That's just the way I present my bottom baits. And
that's with an 18mm, basically. You still fish 18mm?
18 or 16 or whatever I think is right for the time. Okay. No, I'll quite happily use like 15mm wafters on it. That's probably what I use the most on it, is a 15mm wafter, even if I'm over 18mm baits or 15mm baits. I use a 15mm wafter. I'd say a hair that just clears the bend, an inch stripped back above the eye of the hook. Tungsten liner. I always use a tungsten liner because it balances a wafter absolutely perfectly. That and the weight of the hook, and you don't even have to check them; they bang on every time. Your standard 8 inches or whatever,
8 inches of rig,
away you go. It's a very, very simple, very, very effective rig. But if I think I need more, I think I want to get off the bottom a little bit, or whatever, then 360 or the Ronnie. But I've used the Ronnie a lot more recently. I'm really starting to like it.
I was going to say you're really enjoying it.
I was very late to the party with that. I thought, why bother with that? It's just a 360, and it was all this poncing about with the shrink tube and over steaming it and setting it, and then you'd have a fish, or you put it in the butt eye and tighten it up and walk around the lake, and then you look at it and you think, now it's not. It's not like a bent hook, which is what it basically is. It's a soft bent hook, isn't it? Yeah. It's a bent hook that when you hook a fish, instantly straightens. It's the best of both worlds. Yeah. And then you gave me some little beads and ruined me.
Been very popular for us actually. Also, we've done one in kit now as well, and they're selling really well because it's everything in a little pack that you need. And the beauty of them is as well, it's just so easy. If you just nick that point, you've had a fish. It's so easy rather than stripping back the heat shrink or something like that. You can just slide the bead up, replace the hook, boom, within seconds, and you're back out.
Middle of the night, pop my glasses on, head torch, boom, 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 and it's back out.
Yeah.
But that's made it very easy because it just sits perfectly, and if not, you just put
there's lovely angle on them as well, don't you?
And it's just there, and it's made it. It's taken away the faff, and I think that's now a very, very easy rig to tie. Yeah. I've used it a lot lately, and I've caught a lot of fish on it. I like it a lot.
Okay. So quickly as well, bite times. I know we sort of covered a little bit of this more even for you. For anyone that's watching now, best time really, like I say, during the autumn is what time for a bite?
Well,
the evenings. We got some couple of shots on here as well, I think, to show.
That's
Mr. Pink.
Mr. Pink. That is, yeah. That's one of the.
A couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
That was
this one.
3 weeks.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago. Nighttime shot, as you can probably see there. It depends. I mean, classically in the autumn, which I think I've already mentioned, that evening, night time, anything in darkness and the first hour or so of light are your prime times for seeing them, for catching them, for hearing them. But again, there's always factors that dictate that can change that. And K1's very much like that. You've got two different ends of the lake, and they're like different lakes. And they'll get up this end where I caught this. This is the non-weedy end, the less popular end. And they'll get up there, and they won't show until just on dark. And you might, if you're lucky, get one, get two, or whatever in the night, and woof, they're gone. The other end of the lake, it's split up. There's bits, if you're out in the deeps, it might be the same. But there's weed, there's slightly shallower bits, and they're day bites. I think if you ping to the next one.
Yeah, because we got I think it's the Lebanese, isn't it? Oh,
no, linear. That was linear. A week later, maybe 2 weeks. And that bridge denotes the end of the lake. The island lake that I was fishing is under that bridge. Yeah. And it's the same water. There's a metal fence that divides it, stops the fish going through. And this swim, or these swims at this end, I find to be very, very good in the days. I didn't have a single bite at night, and then come first thing in the morning, bang, and you got something like this on the end. I think it was 38 pounds. And I think I had a couple more that session as well. So, it's hard to pin down bite times when you've got varying areas, but you can pin down where they're going to be if you look deep enough into it at certain times of the day. But in general, broad stroke, I would say you get a lot more night bites at this time of the year in the autumn than you would in the 2 or 3 months leading up to it. Yeah. Personally, that's how I sort of view it. A lot more activity at night. Yeah.
Well, that's been a really interesting insight, especially into autumnal fishing. But there's one other thing I want to bring up with you. I think it was a week or two ago, or around the last week actually. I think you were speaking to Alan, and I think we wanted to get you in here. He was like, "Listen, this is the week for me. I will not do anything."
I made a massive mistake. I know exactly where you're going with this. I booked in to come here. Yeah. And I was talking to her on the phone. He said, yeah. I said, okay, so it's all set for the the 22nd, I think it was. All set for the 22nd? I went, yeah. Hold on. I said, what? 22nd? Have I just arranged something for the 22nd of September? He went, yeah, is there a problem? I said, of course it's a problem. It's the equinox. There is no way on this planet I'm going anywhere apart from fishing. The full moon, which is the harvest moon, was on the 21st, which was I believe it was the 21st and the 22nd. It was a Monday and a Tuesday, which are my fishing nights. So the full moon's on the Monday and the equinox is on the Tuesday. And I'm just, there is no way. I've made a massive mistake. Cancel that and make it this week. So that was last week.
Last week, sorry, yeah.
A very, very, very important time. Like I say, September's very important to me anyway. From the 12th to the 14th, or the 10th to the 14th, there's always been, if I look back through my captures, I caught so many fish in that week. I don't know why, but I've caught a lot. And nothing special happens in that week on your calendar, but I catch a lot of fish, big fish, in that week. And then you get the full moon. Now that full moon is always, anyone will tell you who follows moon phases, that's the one. You know, that one, and maybe a bit on the hunter's moon, which is the October one, which is coming up. Yeah, that's the period you really want to be out there. And the equinox as well. That equinox, I don't know if you know, but it means equinox means equal night. So on the
12 and 12,
12 and 12 is on the autumnal equinox. That's the day that it's the equal hours of daylight and darkness everywhere, I believe. I believe around the globe. I think that's how the earth spins and whatever, and it all works out. Something clever. And it has an effect on a lot of things, nature, plants, what have you. And I think on the fishing, it just always seems to fish well. So, yeah, for me, that's all of September, I try and do nothing apart from go fishing. I know that's not possible.
Because it is crazy, but you said that. I actually went out fishing myself, had one of the big residents out of the lake. The lovely Dan Chart, one of our team members, had triple row out.
Right.
It just seemed up and down the country, it was stuck
do.
in my mind. There was just a lot of big fish came out.
Yeah, there always will be.
And now my diary for them weeks is sort of, I've always put aside for fishing now to speak with you.
Yeah.
But I think was this another one, the lever here that you had, was this during this period?
This was, I said just now about the 10th to the 14th of September being which is before the equinox, and you know the equinox is usually 20, 21, 22 of the month. The full moon obviously can vary. That moon can actually be in the beginning of October. Just depends, on the cycle.
Yeah.
But that magic week for me of the sort of 10th, 12th, mainly the 12th, 14th, those sort of dates, 15th. I was on Mary's Lake in Northampton this particular year, and I'd done fairly well. I'd caught throughout the year, but it had been building. The fish had been moving into an area and starting to feed heavier, and I'd been getting a few. And then on the 14th, I believe it was, the 13th and the 14th, so one night and the next morning, I had 3 bites, and I had the 3 biggest fish in the lake. I had this, which the big leather, obviously, was 46 pounds, I believe, something like that.
That is a big leather as well.
I had a big, deep Italian at 39, which was probably the second. It was the second biggest mirror. There was another one that fluctuated with it, but it was like one of the big 3. And I think we've got a photo. That one, that's the bullet hole common, which is the biggest common in the lake. So all 3, bang, bang, bang.
How big was this one out of curiosity?
That was 39 as well. I actually had that one and the Italian, which I haven't got a photo of, practically at the same time. I've got a photo of me holding this big deep Italian, and then self-takes, and then I must have had it on like a intervalometer or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the next photo is of the back of my heel,
in leg it
and
mode,
the unhooking mat, running off camera to slide it back and pick up the other rod and land this one.
Wow.
And that was that magic week for me. And then the next morning I had the big lever and was done. So,
crazy. I mean, it's very interesting because you follow moon phases quite heavily. Obviously, it'd be nice to get you back in at some point to talk about things like moon phases, air pressures, winds and things like that. So I think what we'll do is not mention too much about it, but maybe get you back in another time.
Yeah, sure.
To sort of just see what your mindset and how you apply it to your angling, you know, because it's something...
there is a lot in it. There's a lot to it, the moon phases and that. It doesn't dictate the way I fish, but like you say, we can go into that in a lot more depth.
Be an interesting bit. I think a lot of people, we get asked about it a lot, and it'd be something interesting, I think, for people to sit and listen about, you know. But lastly, I mean, what are your plans now for the rest of the year? Is it? I'm
quite looking forward to it, actually. I've got a ticket for Yateley now. I've never fished Yateley. Back in the day. Well, I say I've never fished Yateley. That's a complete lie. I've fished the Pads Lake a couple of times, which is their sort of, not a day ticket, you book it, it's a separate thing. I fished that a couple of times. Back in the day, I did fish over the road on the other half of the complex, which was the nursery and the match, I think it was. Just 2 nights ever in my life, I think. But that's it. I've never fished the main lakes at Yateley, and a friend of mine now owns it and runs it, Sticky Bean, Martin Gardner. And I've managed to get a winter ticket. which starts on November the 1st, for the Carp Lake and the Split Lake. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. Having never fished the lakes before, obviously the fish are different, but they've got some very, very nice fish, some big fish in there as well now. It's a nice little syndicate. I know a few of the blokes. I've joined their Facebook page, and I've seen people I used to fish Horton. I mean, Sticky I know from Horton, but I've seen other old Horton members on there, and people think, oh, I know him from donkeys ago.
That'll be nice.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Apparently it's very quiet up there. There's no
Aeroplanes.
ambient noise. There's no planes, make filming an awful lot easier. There's no dog kennels on one bank, you know. There's none of that. It's a very peaceful place. Hopefully it's a nice little syndicate. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Good. Well, being local to us, because obviously we're Guildford, it's not far from us. So we'll definitely, if it's okay, we'll try and get some cameras up there to do some on the bank filming with you about bits and pieces, and off on holiday next week as well. I think.
I am going to Cyprus.
Nice.
Although I've been telling the lads down the lake that I was going to Corfu. And then this morning I said, I'm off to Cyprus. He said, you were going to Corfu yesterday. It all begins with C.
Yeah,
he said, you're going to end up in
you
Cornwall,
go wherever you're
mate.
told. Wherever the missus says you go, you
That's
go.
That's exactly what it is, isn't it? I came downstairs, said I booked a holiday. I was like, happy days, well done. I don't want to get involved in that.
You're exactly like me.
Little pictures of a pool and a hotel. What do you reckon on this one? I don't know.
They all look the same to me. I'll just go.
Good photographer, bad photographer. That's all I see.
Well, look, have a great time when you're away. Thanks for coming to see us. Yeah. And we'll come over and see you at Yateley.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
And thanks for coming to see us, and see you soon.
No worry, mate. See you later.
Bye.